All right, welcome back. Any questions so far? We're doing good? Yeah, sure. Go ahead. No, not at all. That's okay. Hold on. I got to translate for the visually impaired at home that are just listening and can't hear what you're saying. Um, the question is actually we're going to talk about defects. Is do people actually? Uh, I'm sorry. Say it again. I got thinking about what I was going to say. I could hardly wait to hear what I was going to say and forgot what you asked. Yeah, we're going to get to it. So, okay, never mind then. Yeah. All right, cool. I'll tell you what, we'll talk about it right now. If I don't cover it, then ask the question, okay? Sure. So, one of the things that title work has issues with are these things called title defect. A defect, as you know, is anything that's wrong or abnormal or causes a problem. And all of these things can be on the title work. I have only seen a defect probably 3 times. However, all 3 times causes a big problem because it disrupts the chain. It could break the chain. It could cause other people to have to get involved. And usually those other people are, who we're talking about, right? That's right, an attorney. So while they're very uncommon, when it happens, it's usually a dramatic effect, okay? By definition, the title work, a defect, the title company defines a defect, is any condition that calls into question the legal ownership of real estate, okay? And that legal ownership is challenged or can be defective through any of these things down here at the bottom of this chart for those of you with the handout or online. Missing signatures, somebody didn't sign or somebody forgot to sign. Anything that affects the title due to a lien, like an unknown lien, somebody didn't record it, or one that didn't get a release and we thought it was released. If you have a lien on the seller's property and they think it's released and then they sell the property, the new guy comes in and brings a lender and the lender thinks their first lien, dude, they may not be, because the one that was on there before, since it didn't get an exception and there is no release, it could still be on the property. Love coffee. Or they may think it's still on the property, which is still going to cause a lawsuit, even if they isn't still on the property. Okay? So if they fail to record recording rules, and there are some rules to have documents recorded. You've got to record them in a certain amount of time, otherwise they can become what's called stale. You can't record a stale document. The one that I was involved with personally, the undisclosed error. That sounds funny. An undisclosed error. Not error, an undisclosed error. All right? Some little kid that came along that the sister didn't know about, basically. Forgery. Somebody actually signed someone else's name. Mental incompetence. Somebody's mentally incompetent and transfers the property, or someone claims they were mentally incompetent, and you see this all the time, like the Simons, or what was the Anna Nicole Smith, when the dad dies and leaves all the property to the new ex-wife, and then the kids claim that dad was not mentally incompetent. Not really applies here as title insurance, but that concept happens. Suppose, a little old lady sells her house to somebody, and the kids claim that mom wasn't competent, not because they want the money or anything, just because they want mom to keep her house. So there's got to be some competence. A name confusion. That's happened. That happens a lot, especially with you ladies that may have bought property in a single name and now are signing a married name, or vice versa. If you were married and now gone through the big D, and I don't mean Dallas. Well, that's the best of singing you're going to get. Bought property in a married name and now you got a single name. All right. So name confusion, things like nicknames. Bob and his name's Robert. Specifically my case, everybody wants to call me Ray, and that's not my name. It's Raymond. All right. So I got to make sure the documents say Raymond. Now, with that being said, I've got a good friend whose given name is Ray. That's his name. So ironically, when people try and be formal with him, they want to call him Raymond, and he gets upset because that's not his name. And when people want to try and be informal with me, like sales reps, I was going, hey, is Ray in? Well, they know it's not for me because nobody calls me Ray. That's not what I go by. It's not my name. If a defect is found prior through a search, you guys got to resolve that problem, okay? Now, I understand you guys are not going to be the searchers or the underwriter. You guys are going to be sales reps mainly. But, I mean, you got to start somewhere and work into it. Hopefully what's going to happen is when something happens, your searcher or your abstractor or your office manager is going to call you up and go, Cindy, hey, that title work's got some problems with it. Get a hold of the agent and see if we can see what's going on. You know, there's a whole bunch of liens on the property, or it's missing something, things like that, okay? So hopefully, if there is a problem with the title, we find it in advance and we can clear it up. Now, let's jump hats and change hats real quick. As a real estate agent, this is always confusing as to when to order title work, all right? So you guys could be involved in this when you start making relationships with realtors out there about ordering title work. And, you know, they may ask you this question, when do we order title work? Do we order it when I list the property, or do I wait until we get an offer? And believe it or not, there's some, excuse me, going to sneeze. There's some pros and cons about offering it or ordering it at either place, all right? The most common time and the least problematic to me is ordering it when it gets listed, okay? So that might be something you guys, but check with your boss to see how they're going to have you order that. But in my opinion, that's probably the least problematic of all of them, okay? Because here's what it does. A couple things. One is the liens that you found, you will be able to know how much they are. I had a deal, 10 years ago, where a guy got in trouble with the bank, wanted to sell his house, told me he owed like $106,000. So I did my nifty math calculation, figured out how much we'd have to sell it for. Turned out to be like, it was $111,250. So we got an offer down in that $111,300 or $111,400, and we ended up taking it. And I ran title work when he got the offer and found out, lo and behold, that because he hadn't made some payments, he also had late fees backed up and attorney fees piled on. So he ended up, get this, and I'm not stuttering, as the seller, he ended up bringing like $2,100 to the table because we theoretically took an offer that didn't clear the liens based on the money the buyer offered. So he had to bring money. Probably would have found out or done a little bit better if we'd ordered it when he listed. We could have said, hey, you realize you don't owe 106. You owe like 108.4 or something like that. I would hesitate saying that's my fault again, so I'm not going to, especially on recording. But I did learn from that. So now as soon as you record, or as soon as you list, you call the title company and score the title work. That won't happen. The other thing that won't happen is if you do legitimately have things pop up, you've probably got more time to solve those problems than if you did or waited until the purchase agreement. Now, here's some downside to ordering it when you list the property, okay? Anybody know? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead. No? For those of you listening at home, he said something to do with the fees. No, the fee's going to be the same because you're going to do the owner's policy, and then the simultaneous is for a buyer. Doesn't matter which buyer. No, here's the problem. You're actually close, though. We don't know who the buyer is. So they cannot run a personal search against the buyer. So we actually have a really cool name for it. When you order title work on your listing before there's a buyer known, you actually call it a TBD, to be determined. TBD title work, because I don't know who the buyer is. So we can actually really only do like the owner's policy to make sure my owner doesn't have any issues. Once we get the purchase agreement and we know who the buyer is, then you can work on the lender side and work on the lender to make sure he's got no outstanding personal liens against him. Now, here's another reason, downside for those of you keeping score at home. Under the new TRID rules, you're going to get used to that. You cannot force a buyer to use a company that as part of the deal. You can't make them use this company as a condition of the deal. So get used to this, you sales reps, all you guys. Because what's going to happen is this. Your client, i.e. the listing agent, is going to call you and say, hey, Cindy, I want a TBD title work drawn on my new listing, and we're going to list it. It's going to be a $100,000 house, yada, yada, yada. And they go out, they being the title company, your guys, are going to go out and pull the title work and do all the searching and do the TBD work and do all that. And then we're going to get an offer, and in the offer, the buyer's going to ask to use his title company because he knows somebody that works over at XYZ title, and the seller is going to say, well, I don't really care to make the deal go. Let's just agree to it. And now they pull the title work from your company that's already done some work and move it to another title company as part of the purchase agreement, okay? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no, they can't. You can't. One of the rules, it's in RESPA, and I believe it's Rule 8 that says we cannot force, it's either 8 or 9, I'm going by memory. You cannot force someone to use a company as part of the negotiation tactics. So they can actually say, I want to use, and this is probably where you guys would split. Remember we talked about 2 title companies? So if I pulled title company at Chicago Title, let's say, and I call my rep, Jamie, and I said, hey, Jamie, I want XYZ, I want a TBD on this property. Probably what I would do then in the real world is under the agent-to-agent remarks, I would say, hey, I've already pulled the title work with Chicago Title. Now, here's the cool part. All title companies, knock on wood, should come up with the same answer whenever they do the search. So whether we use my title company, your title company, doesn't matter. So if I say, hey, I've already got title work pulled, most of the time when the buyer makes the offer, they're just going to say, hey, let's go ahead and use the title work he's got, especially if you're using a big name like Chicago. I mean, if you were using Billy Joe Jim Bob's title work, they may have a problem with that. But let's say you want to use your own and say, hey, the buyer gets to pick the title company. I could still say, yeah, go ahead, choose your own title company. I'm staying with Chicago, and you go over to Billy Joe Jim Bob's title. That's where the 2 title companies would come in. All right? Tell you what, let's move on real quick.